So we can do a few more excerpts from the suttas. They're covering a wider range of topics. I haven't specifically selected them, so we'll see how far we can get without making it too long. Imagine because a lake of water was disturbed, stirred up, became muddy. In that place, a man with eyes standing on the bank would not see the oyster shells, the gravel, the pebbles, and the shoals of fish wandering around and standing still. For what reason? Because of the disturbance of the water. In just this way, because that the bhikkhu with disturbed mind will know his own welfare, or the welfare of another, or welfare of both, or that he will realize the truly, genuine, noble attainment, knowledge and vision which is beyond human phenomena, that is impossible. For what reason? Because bhikkhus of his disturbance of the mind. Anguttara Nikaya 145. So the thing to note here is that the disturbance of the mind is something that the bhikkhu is responsible for, or everyone is responsible for. So the simile that the muddy water, it's not that something else disturbs your mind because of which you don't get to see the oyster shells, the gravel and so on. It's you disturb your mind on account of something else. Because if the disturbance of the mind were truly rooted in outside of yourself, if it's not up to you, well, you wouldn't be able to then overcome it. Because you cannot possibly prevent water from being disturbed in that sense. These things are not in your control. So sight, sound, smell, taste, touches, they come your way. You cannot prevent that. But you can train the mind to not be disturbed on account of it. So what this line pretty much says, it's for an untrained mind there will be disturbance when met with disagreeable. And then because of that disturbance, you will not know what's good for you, what's good for the others, what's good for both. Or that you would be able to truly realize the genuine noble attainment, knowledge and vision that's beyond the human phenomena. That's impossible. So consequently, 146 Anguttara Nikaya says that the lake was transparent, clear and undisturbed. In that place a man with eyes standing on the bank would see the oyster shells, the gravel, and so on, because of the non-disturbance of the water. So his mind has been trained, there is no disturbance amidst things that would disturb you, and that's why you will not lose the context, you will not lose the perspective on what's good for you, on your own welfare, or what's beneficial for you, what's beneficial for others, what's beneficial for both. Then we have Anguttara 148. It says, because I do not see one other thing that is quickly changing as the mind. So much so, because it's not easy to compare this quickly changing mind. So there's no simile the Buddha would have given to how quickly the mind changes. And now Anguttara 151 and 152, because this mind is shining, or luminous, as some other translations are. This mind is shining and it is defiled by the superimposed defilements. The uninstructed ordinary person does not know this as it is. Therefore, I say, for the uninstructed ordinary person, there is no development of mind. So, we have a whole essay on this called The Infinity of the Mind, if I remember correctly. It's on our website, you can find it there. But in brief, the point is that the mind, as in the aspect of your experience as a whole. So the experience as a whole is the 5 aggregates. There's nothing outside of it. Whatever you can say, statement that there's nothing outside of it is that which you can know only on account of your 5 aggregates. So even that's within. So recognizing that the mind is part of basically that structure, it's part of the 5 aggregates, means that they cannot truly be affected by ignorance. So the defilements cannot defile the 5 aggregates. That's what the Buddha meant in other suttas, where he said that upadana, holding or attachment, whatever you want to translate it, assumption, we translate as assumption, is not the 5 aggregates. It's not in them. It's not part of them. So it's not that you, like when you practice the Dhamma, you remove parts of the aggregates that were corrupted and defiled, and then you keep the rest. No, all the aggregates are not defilements. They cannot be in them. But, as the Buddha said, desire and lust in regard to the 5 aggregates makes upadana be there, pretty much, in regard to it, kind of superimposed over them. So that's why it's meant ignorance. When the Buddha said avidya, ignorance is beginningless. Means there was no first point before which aggregates were fine, and then aggregates became ignorant. Ignorance became part of the aggregate. So you can measure the first point of origin. There is no such point, because ignorance is not in the aggregates. It's pretty much your attitude in regard to the 5 aggregates, in regard to experience the whole, in regard to the whole world and realms and devas and whatever else you might be experiencing. It's your attitude in regard to it, fueled by desire and lust, that ignorance is there, that upadana is there, that these superimposed defilements are there. Not recognizing where those defilements are, not recognizing what the problem is, pretty much, not recognizing that defilements are not in the aggregates, you will then be dealing with the aggregates, looking after the aggregates, trying to get rid of the aggregates, thinking that's how you're dealing with the defilements. So that's what Buddha means here. The uninstructed, ordinary person doesn't understand this as it is. Therefore, there is no development of the mind. Because what is the development of the mind? Well, it's freeing the mind from the defilements. So in order to free your mind from defilements, you need to know where the defilements are, so to speak, what they are. And if you don't know what they are, you will not be able to uproot them. So the statement that this mind is luminous or shining is basically a statement of that factual impossibility to be polluted in itself. But that doesn't mean that you are free from pollution in regard to your own mind. And that's the sole point here. Sometimes people, obviously, who haven't understood what defilements are, would then jump to a conclusion and say, so the mind is always pure, thus implicitly saying, I don't need to do any work because the purity is always there and it cannot be defiled. No, the possibility for purity is always there because there are certain things that cannot be defiled, such as mind, such as the 5 aggregates. That doesn't mean that your experience as a whole, as in your attitude towards your own mind, towards your own aggregates, is free from defilement. So that's where the defilements are, and that's where they need to be uprooted from. So then Anguttara 152 says, Bhikkhus, this mind is shining and it is liberated from those superimposed defilements, gratuitous defilements. See, they're superimposed, they're gratuitous, because they cannot be there. Uninstructed worldling, not knowing that they cannot be there, that's why he assumes them there. That's why we translate the upadana as assumption. Holding implies you kind of holding onto something, then you see that you're holding it, then you choose to let it go. But it's far more subtle than that, upadana. Upadana is assumption of being. You assume something to be, to be. That's it. Full stop. You assume something to be when that isn't so. And that's why you cannot, like, if you become aware of upadana, if you become aware of your assumptions, they cease to be assumptions. So they require a layer of unawareness, which is the layer of ignorance, as a necessary basis for it. So if you recognize that desire and lust are completely gratuitous, they cannot penetrate the sense objects, cannot enter them, cannot consume them, cannot partake in them. Literally, it's just this superimposed assumption over your senses, sense objects, and so on, that because it's not checked, it's not restrained, has resulted in the views that are fueled by greed, aversion, delusion, desire and craving, and maintenance of that assumed state. That's why even sensuality is one of the assumptions. It's not really in the things. In the same sense, defilements are not in the mind or in the aggregates, or in the feeling, or in the perception, or in the form. It's in regard to them because of your unchecked attitude and desire and lust towards it. You haven't understood it. And that's why the one who has understood that, for him, the Buddha says, there is the development of the mind. So it's basically, if you haven't understood this, if you haven't developed the right view, there is no development of the mind, regardless of the amount of effort you put in it. And that's what these short lines so succinctly say. Because this mind is shining, it is liberated from the superimposed defilements. The instructed noble disciple knows this as it is. He understands how that works. He understands where the problem is. Therefore I say, for the uninstructed noble disciple, there is development of the mind because he knows it as it is. He understood that. Then on a slightly different note now, that's Anguttara 1, Book of 1 and 130 to 139. Bhikkhus, whatever bhikkhus explain non-Dhamma as Dhamma, those bhikkhus are practicing for the harm of many people, for the unhappiness of many, for the non-welfare, for the harm, for the suffering of many, devas and humans. And bhikkhus, those bhikkhus produce much demerit and cause this good Dhamma to disappear. Bhikkhus, whatever bhikkhus explain Dhamma as non-Dhamma, those bhikkhus are practicing for the harm of many, for the unhappiness, for the non-welfare and so on. Same goes for bhikkhus who explain non-Vinaya as Vinaya and Vinaya as non-Vinaya. Bhikkhus who explain things not said and uttered by Tathagata as having been said and uttered by Tathagata, and having been said and uttered by Tathagata as not having been said and uttered by Tathagata. What has not been practiced by Tathagata as having been practiced by Tathagata, and has been practiced by Tathagata as having not been practiced by Tathagata. What has not been made known by Tathagata as having been made known, and what has been made known as having not been made known. The thing to note here is that, see, you would read this passage and you would kind of think, oh yeah, some people might choose to do that, but this does not specify, or rather it's not a requirement that must be done consciously, so to speak. In other words, in good faith, you might be thinking it's in good faith. You might be teaching the Dhamma, but because you haven't understood it, you haven't understood what the Dhamma is, you don't have the right view, yet you're teaching it, even if accidentally you're misrepresenting it, which you would be without the right view, it's going to result in harm and non-welfare and so on. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Not like if you express your view on what Dhamma is and clearly state, oh, this is how I understood it, I'm not sure, I don't know for myself. That's one thing. But another thing is to teach the Dhamma while you know you don't know it, but you assume that simply by having a good intention to help others, it's fine. And that's the big problem here. It's not fine. Because when those people hear that as Dhamma, they'll think that's what Dhamma is, and because of that, they will not look for what the actual Dhamma is. So even your well-wishing intention to teach the Dhamma to somebody, not being sure whether it's the Dhamma you're teaching, or just believing that it's the Dhamma you're teaching, but haven't verified it for yourself, that will be the sole reason for blocking their progress. And then they'll pass away, and who knows where they're going to be reborn, and so on. And they had a chance to approach the Dhamma rightly. But on account of your well-wishing, misguided instruction, you led them astray, pretty much. And same goes for anything else. So that's why even in other suttas, when you read that, like the Sati, son of the fisherman, with a pernicious wrong view that sensuality there's no harm in it. It's not like that there were these morons or idiots who just had this view obstinately against the Buddha. No, they genuinely had that view, could not see anything wrong with it, and they thought it's good. They thought they're practicing the Dhamma. They thought that's what the Buddha was teaching. They thought it's great. And then they heard that the Buddha said the opposite. Then they kind of disagree with it because they could not understand it. So it's easy to assume like there were this caricature of people, but they were most likely not. So you realize that whenever bhikkhus explain non-Dhamma as Dhamma, it doesn't need to be done with this evil intent behind. No, it simply states, if you explain non-Dhamma as Dhamma, that's why you're incurring harm. Full stop. Doesn't matter why you do it. If it matters, the Buddha would have said so in this very sutta.